But why is he saying I can't breathe, and why is he pushing on it as if he can't get out?
And it doesn't show a hole.
There's no hole. There's no fingers. I don't see his fingers. There's no hole.
I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, I don't know, like, what you want me to tell you.
Welcome back. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. The story I have for you today is about a man who was in a very volatile and dangerous relationship with a woman who was extremely manipulative. And even after multiple arrests of both parties, they would still keep getting back together until one day things just went too far. This is the story of Jorge Torres. Jorge Torres Jr. was born on February 13, 1978, in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to his parents, Jorge Torres Sr. and Blanca Torres. He had 3 children, 2 daughters, and 1 son, who also lived in Pennsylvania. Jorge would move to Florida following a divorce, and in late 2016, he met a woman named Sarah Boone. The two had actually met at a local bar after a mutual friend introduced them. Now, Sarah had been married for 13 years prior to this and had a teenage son with her ex-husband, Brian Boone. After their divorce, they shared custody of their teen son, and Brian would pay Sarah $1,000 a month in alimony, something that she lived off because she had a hard time holding down a job. Jorge and Sarah seemed to hit things off pretty quickly and had a lot in common. Sarah found him to be smart, handsome, and funny, and couldn't believe that he was interested in her. This was because she felt rather broken following her divorce, but since Jorge had also just recently gone through a divorce of his own, they bonded over this. Now, Sarah's husband was in the process of trying to force her out of their marital home. So not long after she met Jorge, they decided to get an apartment of their own together. With the help of Sarah's ex-husband, Brian, she and Jorge were able to rent a townhome at 4748 France Court in Winter Park, Florida. Now, as I said, Sarah had a difficult time holding down a job for very long. She had previously worked as a waitress, but she usually just liked to sit home during the day and drink instead. And as for Jorge, he had worked at an Ace Hardware up until the time that they closed. After that, he would buy things online that he found to be cheap and then resell them for more. He would also sell some of the paintings that he had done. But for the most part, Jorge was completely dependent on Sarah. She controlled where he lived, where he drove because he didn't have a car, only a bike, and he also did not have a cell phone of his own, so he shared a cell phone with Sarah as well, which meant she likely tracked all of his movements. Their relationship was anything but happy, and over the next 3.5 years, they would break up and get back together multiple times. Both Jorge and Sarah had problems with alcohol, and things would quickly turn volatile when they began drinking. In June of 2018, Sarah had been arrested on a charge of battery by strangulation, targeting her boyfriend Jorge. He was also arrested and charged with battery stemming from an alcohol-fueled altercation inside the home. Jorge told an officer that Sarah wrapped her hands around his neck and attempted to strangle him as he was walking upstairs to get away from her after an argument, and this prompted him to kick her in retaliation. A year later, in 2019, Jorge would be arrested twice in the span of 2 months on charges of battery.
I should probably not be together, but that's not my business. Yes, ma'am.
In July of 2018, police were called to the couple's home after a night out. Boone told the officers she had recently gone through a divorce, that Torres was going through a lot, and that he had beat her up that night.
He let loose on my ass tonight, and I'm not having it. Okay. All right. I got kicked in the face. I don't want him to get in trouble, but I'm tired of being beaten up.
Torres told the officers that she strangled him until he was having trouble breathing. He had red marks on his neck, and Boone's eye was bruised. She was arrested for aggravated battery by strangulation, and he was arrested for battery.
You could probably stay in there for a day, maybe 2. Or what might possibly. It's all up to the judge.
In 2019, Boone called the police to their home. She claimed Torres had beaten her up again and that he had told her, "You are going to die." Boone had a lump on her face and scratches on her neck. Torres also had scratches on his neck, but he denied hitting her. He was arrested for battery. Torres was arrested for battery again a month later. Boone called the police on him, accusing him of punching her multiple times in the neck. Investigators did see marks on her neck. An officer asked Torres what happened. He said he gets hit all the time. And what is he supposed to do? A week later, even though there was a no-contact order, Torres and Boone were together. And again, a fight broke out.
I was asleep, and again, he comes in and wakes me up because he gets mad at me because I go to sleep. The whole time I'm being belittled. That's when I got punched in my ear.
On the phone, you told me that you attacked him as well.
I didn't attack him.
You said you exchanged, you had a physical altercation on the phone. That's what you told me.
I pulled him off of me.
He said he has marks because I was fighting for my life.
I was being honest with you.
Police found Torres hiding in the bathroom. He told them Boone hit him often. He was arrested again for battery. This case, like their other domestic violence incidents, was not prosecuted because neither of them would press charges.
Regardless of the turbulence, at multiple points throughout their relationship, George had asked Sarah to marry him, and on at least one occasion, she had said yes. On the morning of February 23, 2020, George woke up on his day off, and according to Sarah, all he wanted to do was start drinking. However, she was able to convince him to help her clean up the house at the same time. Later, they relaxed by drinking a bottle of wine that they had bought on their back porch. Sarah would then say that they spent the rest of their night putting together a puzzle, painting, drinking, singing, and dancing. She would also later claim that George had been angry on and off throughout the day. Early the next afternoon on February 24th, Sarah Boone was contacting 911 saying that her boyfriend George was dead. She said that her and George had bought a bottle of wine, then decided to play hide and seek. She claimed they both thought it was funny if he went into a suitcase and had been laughing about it. But after George had gone into the suitcase, Sarah had forgotten about him, then gone upstairs and fell asleep. When she'd awoken the next morning, George was still in the suitcase, and he was no longer breathing.
I fell asleep, and I woke up, and he was dead in the suitcase, so I don't know what happened. The problem is I fell asleep. I fell asleep.
When did you do CPR?
This morning, when I found him.
Before you called?
Yes!
1 o'clock right now.
I tried. I was awake, but I actually got out of the bed at like 12:30ish, whatever. So I came downstairs, and I was like, oh, he's in the suitcase still.
Sarah Boone would be placed under arrest on the scene after detectives found 42-year-old George Torres' lifeless body, and she was charged with second-degree murder. Based on the medical examiner's findings, George had been in the suitcase for up to 11 hours, and he had died from positional asphyxia. His blood alcohol content was found to be a .213. The autopsy report additionally showed that George had a black eye, as well as other bruises and cuts to his head. His back and hands also had bruises, abrasions, and cuts, indicating blunt impacts all around his body. Now, when police asked Sarah to turn over her cell phone for potential evidence, she willingly gave it to them. When they searched it, they would find 2 videos that Sarah had taken the night prior. In the first video, Sarah is heard laughing as George is pleading with her to let him out of the suitcase.
Oh.
For everything you've done to me.
Oh.
For everything you've done to me.
Oh.
Fuck you.
Oh.
Fuck you.
Oh.
Stupid.
Oh.
That's my name. The word up.
Oh. I can't fucking breathe, babe. Seriously.
Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
Oh. Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
That's on you.
Sarah, I can't breathe.
It's on you.
Sarah.
Real ransom. Now you want to give it for it extra. Because I got this.
Sarah.
Real ransom.
Sarah. Sarah, I can't breathe, babe.
Oh. That's what I feel like when you chewing on me.
Sarah.
Fuck you.
I can't breathe, Sarah.
Yeah. You should probably shut the fuck up.
Sarah.
In the second video, which is just seconds long, the suitcase is now flipped over and in a different spot on the floor. And George is no longer talking inside. When detectives began to question Sarah, they asked her about these videos, and she claimed that she could not even remember taking them the night before. She said it was never her intention to leave him inside the suitcase. She had just gone up to bed and forgotten. She would also say during this interrogation, "I don't think you understand who I am. I'm a straight A student. I'm an outstanding mother and I excel at everything. Completely irrelevant. Who cares?"
No, I was just simply asking because you had a look on your face when she asked you if you've ever done that before. You looked kind of shocked and...
No.
Okay, but why did you say it like that? Like...
I don't think you all understand who I am.
Okay. Well, tell me.
I mean, I've always been a straight A student. I am an outstanding mother to my son.
Okay.
I excel at everything. I would not do that.
When detectives tried to show Sarah the cell phone video that they found, she refused to look and turned her head away, saying, "I don't want to watch it."
You guys are scaring me.
Why?
Well, we just want you to watch this. It came from your phone. Don't you want to know what's on it?
Yes, please. Is it long? Because I don't know how much I can take.
No.
I don't know how much I can take.
I don't know how to find your...
Do I have to watch this? I continuously throw up. I don't sleep. I don't want to see it, if that's okay.
Well, it's on your phone, and you can either explain it or we take it for what it is.
Yeah. We're just trying to give you the opportunity to tell us what's going on. That's it.
It's that long?
2 minutes.
No.
For everything you've done to me. For everything you've done to me. You.
That's you, your voice.
Stupid. That's my name. Don't wear it up. Yeah, that's when you do when you choke me.
I don't want to watch it, please. Okay.
Last time we talked to you, you had said that you put him in the suitcase, he had 2 fingers hanging out, and you
I
went
flipped
to
him
bed.
over. I flipped him over, and that's where it was.
And there's 2 different videos and a still picture where, yeah, it shows you flipping him in different positions, and him saying that he can't breathe, and you saying...
This is upside down. So in order for him to have gotten into it...
It was flipped up.
Right. It was flipped up normal.
Yes.
Like as if you're packing something. So this is upside down.
Guys, this is killing me right now.
So this image, it's upside down, and then this small video that occurred 11 minutes later, it's flipped over the other way. closer to your dining room table.
Okay.
Now, he's obviously still in there. So he didn't, how did it go from the back to the front?
I flipped it. My plan was not to go upstairs and go to sleep.
Well, that's what you did.
Yeah.
But not intentional.
No, you told me you went upstairs because you were getting ready for bed.
Stopped here.
Okay, but
Where's here?
show me where you can see any fingers coming out, because there's the end.
And his head's right here.
Mm-hmm.
So going like this, rather than going all the way up, it's like this.
Sarah additionally told detectives that she did not think the "fuck you" towards George in the video was malicious at all, and she just didn't believe his claims that he couldn't breathe. "I thought it was the boy crying wolf," Sarah said.
Why is he saying I can't breathe, and why is he pushing on it as if he can't get out?
And it doesn't show a hole.
There's no hole. There's no fingers. I don't see his fingers. There's no hole.
I don't know what you want me to tell you. Like, I don't know, like, what you want me to tell you.
I'm just showing you, I'm just telling you what we see and what we've heard from the other video.
I understand.
He's begging for you to let him out. You're laughing in the beginning, and then in the end it sounds kind of like a...
No, it's not malicious.
Well, saying
It's not malicious.
then what is that?
What does mean to you?
Well...
Like if I were to tell my
like he does. Like, I get called everything but a white woman, so...
Okay.
My intention was not to leave him in there. Please understand that. My intention was not to leave him in there.
But you went upstairs thinking that he could get himself out, but the video shows...
That's what I told you.
At no point can I see his fingers.
He'll be up here any minute.
And then 30 minutes later, he didn't show.
And he's telling you
And I
he
didn't
can't
wake
breathe.
up.
Do you think
not
he's
able to get out.
joking? You told me he was laughing, and
We were before.
The video, there's no
When we
laughing.
first got in there, both of us were.
So how long was he in there for? Like, this video is at 11:12 when it starts, so was he in there for like a long time prior to recording this?
No.
So it goes from funny to no longer funny,
But
you're the only one laughing.
But I didn't think that he was, like, panicky. Like,
So pushing up on a suitcase saying, Sarah, Sarah, Sarah,
I can't breathe.
George has done that in the past before, too, where it's just like he thinks that he's woe is me kind of thing, where it's like,
He's never been locked in a suitcase, that's where he couldn't get out, so...
It's kind of, I thought it was the boy crying wolf kind of thing.
Okay.
And again, my plan...
But nowhere in there is he laughing, is he joking, he is begging. And you're the only one laughing.
Okay.
And you're the only one saying derogatory comments, like you're mad.
No. Please don't... I don't mean to sound negative, and I don't know if I can say this, but, like, it's like you guys are kind of trying to, like, feed me. Like...
No, I'm just trying to show you a video that you no longer want to watch because you probably don't want to know the outcome of how and what you said.
Well, I know what...
You know what's on that video now?
No.
You remember making that video?
No.
Why don't you remember making the video?
Probably because we had been drinking.
But you weren't drunk.
No. Just because I went upstairs and... Just because you're drunk doesn't mean that you...
You told us times that you were not drunk. You said that you had your wits about you. You said he had his wits about you.
Mm-hmm.
You said that you don't like not having your wits. In my experience, if somebody cannot remember doing something to the extent of making 2 videos and taking a photo, they are intoxicated.
Okay. I understand where you all are coming from.
Well, we're just trying to make sense of it. We're trying to figure out what you're saying.
We're trying to figure out this video.
You explain it to us. We're listening.
I just did. Like, we were playing, and then, like, I thought it was... My plan was not to go upstairs and go to sleep. My plan was not to... He'll be up here any minute.
But you willingly went upstairs and went to sleep. No one forced you to go upstairs and get ready for bed.
My plan wasn't also to leave him in the suitcase.
So why didn't you take him out?
Because I went upstairs, and then I fell asleep.
But why didn't you consciously think, he's asking to come out, he can't
I didn't do it intentionally.
What do you think is going to happen if you leave somebody in a confined space like that?
Well,
thought by not zipping it up all the way, it would be okay. My plan was not to leave him in the suitcase.
And what was your plan?
Waiting for him to come upstairs.
According to her, the suitcase had actually been moved downstairs about a week prior as she was going to donate it to Goodwill. That night, she and George had been having some fun joking around when he decided he wanted to play hide and seek and get inside the suitcase. She saw him get in, however, and decided it would be funny to zip him up. They then began joking around about how funny it was that George could fit inside the suitcase because he was so small. He stood only 5 feet 2 inches and weighed 103 pounds. However, Sarah decided to take this opportunity to talk to George about the things that were bothering her in their relationship. Things would only become more heated, and Sarah would claim that she was fearful if George got out of the suitcase, he would kill her. At one point, according to her, he was able to get his hand out of the suitcase and began to wave it around, so she went over and began to shake his hand. Fearful that he might get out, she saw a nearby baseball bat and then decided to start hitting his hand with the baseball bat to get it back inside the suitcase. She was still saying that she did not intend to kill him. However, she did want him to have some level of discomfort. After taunting him and hitting his hand with the baseball bat, according to Sarah, she had just gone upstairs and fallen asleep and forgot all about George being in the suitcase. When she had woken up the next morning, she didn't know where George was and just assumed that he had gone downstairs to start drinking or look for a job. Then she remembered the suitcase. And Sarah would say that when she found George's body inside that suitcase, she was aghast. After finding her boyfriend, she pulled him out, laid him flat, and began to attempt to perform CPR. But he wouldn't respond. And instead of immediately calling 911, Sarah decided instead to call her ex-husband, Brian, who went over to the apartment. And when he got there, he ended up calling emergency services himself. Now, George's brother would say that he had spoken to George the night prior, before he had gotten into the suitcase. And when he did, he said that George seemed rather calm and didn't seem drunk at all. A few minutes into his phone call with his brother, the brother had heard Sarah screaming in the background for George to get off the phone because she needed to use it. According to this brother, Sarah had previously given George a black eye. And every time they were known to get into a physical argument, Sarah would scratch him. George's brother would also say that every time Sarah and George went to visit George's family, Sarah was drunk. One time, she even pushed George's father. According to this brother, Sarah had even attempted to run someone over at one point with her car. More of George's family would also come forward following his death, and they said that George had been emotionally and physically abused by Sarah. She often berated him and kept him from seeing his family. They never really liked Sarah, and she never really liked them. Sarah Boone wouldn't end up going to trial for nearly 4 years. After 8 different public defenders assigned to her withdrew from the case. Many of these attorneys cited irreconcilable differences. Then, on July 18, 2024, a hearing was held, and it was determined that Sarah would need to represent herself in court. But she wasn't happy with this answer, so she submitted a letter with a hand-drawn advertisement for a new lawyer and was able to find new representation that way. Sarah even requested to have her hair and makeup professionally done for her murder trial. However, these unreasonable demands were denied. Now, prior to her trial finally starting in October of 2024, Sarah Boone was offered a plea deal, but she denied it. Had she accepted this plea deal, she would have only had to plead guilty to manslaughter and would have received 15 years behind bars. Finally, on October 14, 2024, Sarah Boone's trial for the murder of Jorge Torres began, and the defense's argument was that Sarah suffered from battered woman syndrome. According to Sarah's lawyer, she had never wanted to kill George. She loved him, but hated the abuse and was not able to leave. The lawyer would say she tried. She tried kicking him out 6 or 7 times. But George kept coming back, even after she changed the locks. He kept coming back. She didn't have a family. She didn't have the support. She was weak and vulnerable. Which is a load of crap because she kept bailing him out of jail and letting him come back. Sarah would also take the stand in her own defense, and she would speak about the tumultuous relationship that she and George had. Trying to prove her battered woman syndrome, Sarah spoke about a time that she had made steak for dinner for her and George. But George was in a bad mood at the time and was giving her a problem about eating the dinner. She kept trying to encourage him to, but he wouldn't listen. According to her, George just kept saying, "I just want to fuck you on the steaks and fuck you on the potatoes," to which Sarah took offense. So she decided to leave the bedroom where they'd been eating. This prompted George to tell Sarah that she wasn't going anywhere, and then he took his steak knife and stabbed her in the leg. She said she heard a crunch, and it began to profusely bleed. She had then asked George to call 911, but according to Sarah, he refused. He also would not drive her to the hospital because he was too drunk and scared of getting in trouble for what he'd done. So the pair had concocted a story about having a sword fight with the knives, and then George drove her to the hospital. So it was the prosecution's belief that Sarah had intentionally left George inside the suitcase in order to punish him. Neighbors of Sarah and George would testify and say that the apartment walls were very thin, and they would hear the couple fighting quite often, almost daily in fact. On the night that George had become trapped inside the suitcase, a neighbor would testify and say that he had heard Sarah and George fighting starting around 7 p.m. This neighbor also said that they had heard a very loud banging sound coming from the apartment at some point during the night, and it was loud enough to shake their apartment walls. A second neighbor also testified about the same very loud noise and said that it had occurred sometime between 10:30 and 11. The neighbor said the noise had startled him as it was so loud and shook his apartment wall as well. So it seems that Sarah had pushed George down the stairs at some point. Now, even though Sarah had claimed that the bruising to George's body was from her hitting him with a baseball bat once he was already inside the suitcase, the prosecution would demonstrate how the suitcase was padded and solid. So hitting the sides of it with a bat would not have resulted in the injuries that he had incurred. Him falling down the stairs inside the suitcase also would not have given him those injuries. So a fight had to have happened prior to George getting inside that suitcase. And the thing was, when police had arrived on the scene the next day, Sarah had no injuries herself. So this fight was likely very one-sided. What possibly happened was that Sarah had hit George with the baseball bat numerous times, which caused him to fall down the stairs. Then he was either badly hurt or unconscious at that point, so she was able to move him into the suitcase and zip it up. During Sarah's trial, there was also testimony given by a forensic examiner who revealed messages that had been sent between Sarah and George's family, and they showed her going on drunken ramblings and being very verbally abusive. There was one that was sent by Sarah to his family on January 13th that said, "And bless you and all of you too. I will get rid of him." Several videos were also played for the jury, including one in which Sarah is instructing George what to say in court in order to get a case against her dismissed. There's also another video of Sarah screaming at George and provoking him. When the video was played in court that Sarah had taken of George inside the suitcase, it visibly upset his family members, and they ended up having to leave the courtroom. This only prompted Sarah's lawyer to request a mistrial, arguing that the reaction could have tainted the jury's opinion. However, the motion was denied because it's ridiculous. Now, police had found alongside George in the suitcase a tie, his hat, some clothing, and a syringe filled with diazepam. This was prescribed to George, though it's not known exactly why, because it can be prescribed for anxiety or for alcohol withdrawals, so it could have been a term of his probation. One witness that was called to the stand by the defense was a psychologist who said that she had diagnosed Sarah with PTSD. In rebuttal, the state had called on a behavioral health expert who had conducted a court-ordered evaluation of Sarah. According to this woman, Sarah had not given her enough information for her to diagnose her with PTSD, adding that she had a different opinion on Sarah's actions. Even though Sarah's defense was trying to say that she was a battered woman and that's why she had trapped George inside the suitcase, the truth was the violence in her and George's relationship seemed to go both ways, but Sarah seemed to be the main aggressor. She also could have just called the police when George was inside the suitcase and told them that she was afraid he would do something if he got out. But she didn't. So there was very little proof that Sarah had done this because she was a battered woman. Following closing arguments, the jury was swift to deliver a guilty verdict for Sarah Boone. She now faces a minimum of 22.5 years in jail with the possibility of a life sentence. She could have taken a plea deal and gotten only 15. Her sentencing is now scheduled to take place on December 2nd. Sarah's attorney would say that following the verdict, she was shocked. And just yesterday, November 6th, he filed a motion for Sarah to be given a new trial. So we'll see where that goes. A funeral for Jorge Torres was held on Monday, March 2nd, 2020 at Good Life Funeral Home in Orlando, Florida. Well, thank you for listening to George's story today. I don't think Sarah Boone was at all a battered woman who couldn't escape the situation. She and George were both toxic together. And Sarah is a very good liar and manipulator. Therefore, I don't feel guilty about any punishment that's coming her way. She knew what she was doing to George was wrong. He was begging her to let him out of the suitcase, and she just laughed in his face. This is someone she supposedly loved, too. What do you think about this case? So if you like true crime and you want to hear it from me, then don't forget to hit that subscribe button below. And turn on your notifications too, so you'll know when I upload a new video, which is at least twice every week. Also, if you haven't checked out a Wicked World's merchandise shop yet, make sure you do that, because you can get some really cool things, like this sweatshirt there. Until next time, guys, take care. Bye. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon. So check it out at patreon.com/awickedworld or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims never get forgotten and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a case you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email at awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.